Good afternoon. Hi, how are you all? We're going to make this very interactive because we are lucky to have a nice small group and we have an amazing guest here. Marc Desormeau is the global search lead for Lenovo. And if you're not familiar with Lenovo, it is one of the largest. It's a $50-60 billion company that's both B2C, it's B2B, and it's manufacturing. So depending upon where you guys are in your universes, I'm sure we're going to be touching on things. My name is Diane Burley. I'm VP of Content for Lucidworks, and my role is usually to try and bring these unique concepts into something that's very understandable for you folks. So first question here, how many people are involved in your site search? Stand up. Make you stand up because we just ate and we're all tired. And it's day 3 of running around. Okay, great, thank you. How many on the merchandising side? No merchandise, a couple. Okay, we've got some merchandisers. Data science? We've got some data science people. They're not standing. They're like, no, I'm not standing. I'm used to sitting behind cleaning data. I'm not going to stand. Fine. All right. Customer intent. How many here are interested in figuring out what their customers are hoping and thinking, because you're really focused on developing that great customer experience? And if all of you aren't standing, then there's something wrong. So everybody stand up. You should all be interested in customer experience. Okay, good. So I think one of the things that we want to talk about is the fact that the search box holds a tremendous amount of insight. This whole event is about insights, gaining them, so that we better understand our customers, gaining insights so we choose the right technologies, gaining insights so that we can make better decisions. But one of the areas that I think a lot of people have been overlooking is that the search box has this tremendous amount of value. And Marc, I think we're going to turn to you and ask you your thoughts. First, tell us a little bit about your role at Lenovo.
So my role at Lenovo, I'm a product owner, so I'm responsible for global search. And so at Lenovo, we divide the search practice or the search approach into the support, so post-sales. There's a whole separate team that uses Lucidworks for the support search. And then everything else, Lenovo.com all the way down to transactional sales and looking for jobs and all of that goes to my team, which is the global search team. And so the search practice is something that's new at Lenovo, in that historically we've always looked at search as just this little box that sits in the corner, and trying to just make sure that it worked. And we really didn't look at it as a source of insights, information, as really something that ultimately is going to lead to an alternate navigation mechanism and also much deeper insights into our customers' behavior. So that's really been the focus for us in the last couple of years, is starting to develop a search practice.
When you first got into search, what were some of the challenges, and whether that was at Lenovo or wherever, what were some of the challenges you saw that others might be experiencing with search? Or maybe they haven't thought of it and you might give them some insights.
Sure. So, I'll say when I first took over search for Lenovo, it was, as I said, it was a very, very small team. And if you think about Lenovo, we've got our use cases today are everything from someone looking for white papers about the energy efficiency around our data center applications and tools, down to someone who's looking for the right battery to replace in their pen, their touch pen that goes on their laptop. So we've got the whole scale of transactional information, people looking for jobs. They want to understand what our policy is on civic responsibility. So it's a fairly broad mandate, but when we first started out, it was very much a transactional perspective. Lenovo.com, the website, was really seen as a sort of a transactional vehicle for Lenovo to sell direct to customers. And so there wasn't much thought in terms of the experience, in terms of really these use cases beyond just can I sell a PC. And that's the point at which I took over the search practice, and within 30 days of taking it over, I was hauled in front of our executive vice president's office, who came over from Intel and is leading the data center group, and said, I search on data center and I see ThinkPad. What's wrong with this picture? I'm trying to hire people. How does this just doesn't work for me? And so it became clear that we need to shift our approach. Thankfully, Lucidworks and Fusion is flexible enough that we're able to scale very, very quickly. But I'd say the biggest challenge was the breadth of the use cases we have, and then frankly, data hygiene and data quality. We are represented in over 130 markets. Lenovo operates in over 130 markets, $50 billion company, and search is really just reflective of the quality of what people put out on the web, right? So there's garbage in, garbage out is a well-known saying. Well, search really helps you find the garbage quickly if it's there.
So one of the challenges with search is that it used to be very keyword driven, right? And I mean, all of us at Christmas time, we were running around looking for gifts, and you'd type in red sweater, and you would get everything red, and you'd get sweaters, whether they were for you or your spouse or the dog or whatever, but that's what you'd get. And what happens is that keyword search doesn't recognize red sweater as an actual entity. And so that becomes one of the problems, and one of the reasons why people are looking for a search engine that can go the next stage, which is a real search engine versus a keyword search, is because people aren't doing Boolean search anymore. Who here remembers Boolean? Does anybody do Boolean? You need to put something plus something else, or and, not. No, of course not. That's not how people search. They want to be able to find what they're looking for. So what happens is, I'm going to turn to Marc, how do your folks find what people were looking for? What were you doing before you were getting into machine learning? What was the manual way you were doing this?
So a lot of the manual ways was with keywords, right? So trying to structure data in a way that would match the perceived goal of the customers, right? And so that's very time consuming. It's fraught with errors, and frankly, very quickly it becomes unmanageable in terms of the scale of the problem.
Where would they look for this intent?
So a lot of it, frankly, was from our marketing and merchandising teams. They would come forward and say, this is what we think customers are looking for.
You weren't actually mining log files.
We weren't doing a very good job of it beforehand.
So you can look at log files and look at what those queries were that people were writing, and then what they rewrote. So that's called a query rewrite. Mm-hmm. And that's manual, and it's tedious. And what you then do is you take that and you can create dictionaries of synonyms or misspellings and things like that, which helps people find. So if they type in IPDA, now they're probably looking for an iPad. Or somebody was telling me an example at Christmas time, people of a certain generation were looking for iPods, but they really weren't looking for iPods, they were looking for ear pods. They just didn't know that was what kids really wanted. So understanding this intent, well, that's where the search bar starts revealing these insights. So fast
Absolutely.
forward.
So fast forward. The very first step with all of this is using signals. So that was the number one thing that we had to do, is really look at, and again, so looking back at the scope and the breadth of what Lenovo has to cover, and the nature of how we manage our business. It's a very distributed management system around the world. There was varying levels of quality, varying levels of consistency, and so by adopting signals very, very quickly, we were able to, I'd say, address all of the issues that were fundamental. So we'd say organic search yields poor results because of the scope. And then as we start integrating signals, we're able to offset a lot of these quality issues by using customers to start telling us what they feel is important. And that's really the first level of where.
Can you explain what are signals?
So signals is, I guess, a euphemism for capturing customer behavior on the website. It could be any number of things. It could be which facets you click on. It could be which links you clicked on, where you exited. There's a number of different things that we capture throughout the entire customer journey. And then as we start analyzing the data, we start making associations with certain triggers and certain data points, and then we can start influencing the behavior by setting up rules and configurations. And the beauty of it is it's not a one-time thing. It's a learning model. So as the customer behavior changes and as their navigation patterns change, their behaviors change on a website, the algorithms will start adjusting and the signals rules start adjusting dynamically. So we're able to manage it.
What has been some of the changes within the organization since you've started?
So a big part of it was, as I mentioned earlier, we started out with a very small team, and really it was let's just say it was one of those situations where the executives were optimistic about the potential, but they wanted to see the results before they invested too heavily. And so the first year was really about normalizing a search experience that would then become global, demonstrating the value. So the first year was really spent, making sure that the site was stable, that we were getting some foundational things done and put in place, and then starting to share the value. And part of sharing the value is starting to engage our merchandising community and some of these people that are a little bit closer to the sale, and get them to have some skin in the game, understand how the tools work. And so once we did that, the big changes are all of a sudden a recognition that search becomes something more than just this box that drives the conversion, but also provides insights. It's a customer satisfaction driver. It's an alternate navigation mechanism. It's more than just saying, can I find this, but also can I explore your products that maybe I wouldn't have normally been able to find. And so, teams expanded, and I'd say the most significant investment and change we've made this year is the addition of a data scientist to the team.
So our product, Fusion, actually ships with algorithms within the box, but that gives you an opportunity to either tweak them, modify them, throw them out, and start from scratch. Mm-hmm. So you use some of the machine learning that shipped out of the box first. Yeah, and so working with the Lucidworks team, we were able to start parsing. So Lenovo, as you can imagine, just aggregates just a tremendous amount of data. And really a big part of making search effective is just trying to get through a lot of the noise and then trying to understand what's relevant and what we can apply to it. And so the very first step, and I'd say we're sort of past the first step, but we're now into our second step on that journey, is looking at how do we get to the first step of relevancy and the first step of using signals to start improving the experience. And I'd say we're there. We're now, and this is the exciting part, we're now starting to look at how we can experiment with signals. And that's another one of the really nice features that Fusion brings to the table, is the ability to do A/B testing with the signals. So we can go in, put forward a hypothesis, debate it with our data scientist, segment off a small piece of the traffic, and then start optimizing or tweaking and changing those signals and those rules so that we can test our hypothesis in real time. Had you ever considered a black box solution instead of something where you an explainable AI?
Yeah. So we in the past had employed, in one of our largest geographies, had employed basically outsourcing all of this and just coming with the final results. It's certainly fast. In short term, it's attractive. But when we looked at what the mandate was and the scope of where we're trying to go with Lenovo.com, it just didn't fit that model. We really needed something that was more flexible. And as we start looking at SMB, supporting an SMB community, as we start looking at B2C, and we're starting to realize as we get into these signals that not all of our customers, understandably, as I'm sure you all know, not all of our customers follow the path that we expect them to follow. And so we're discovering that many SMB customers are actually coming through the B2C experience, and we can identify them, but right now we're not doing anything to differentiate that experience. With signals, we can do that. And so that's an area that we're exploring now as well.
How many products are in your catalog? Well, did you see that laugh?
Yeah, it really depends on what you define as products, right? Because we're indexing everything from technology papers all the way to the widgets we sell. So in any one country, we may have 300-400 individual items that we're selling, but then we have tens of thousands of white papers, reference documents, customer case studies, and those types of that type of information that we also need to serve up to our customers as well.
So you're treating knowledge as product.
Yes, I think it's helpful to do that because it helps you understand, the search intent. So what are customers trying to get to? We have typically a very simple bifurcated path. The majority of our customers will go to either I'm looking to buy a product or I'm looking for information, but there are still a non-insignificant number of customers who, in the process of looking for information about what direction they want to go in with a data center or with servers or with some other large expense and big ticket item and doing research, will at the same time realize they need to purchase something for their college-bound child. And so that's one of the challenges that we have, is trying to intercept that with signals and then present a relevant experience for customers that we may initially think are enterprise customers but are trying to make a PC purchase but are still going to be enterprise customers long term.
What has been the biggest business change that's come about as a result of gaining these insights about your customer?
So I think the recognition that there are insights available through search, and that I think has really been the biggest moment, I think, on the part of our stakeholders, is looking at this more than just this sort of tool or function on the website, but actually looking at it and saying, okay, well, how do we then, yes, search has to work, but then how do we start integrating some of those insights into other things and other marketing, merchandising activities, acquisition activities as well? So we're working with our 4P team, we're working with our merchandisers more closely, we're working with some of our outbound email marketing team. So we're looking at ways that we can actually start stitching some of that information together that we're getting from search and the behavior, and then providing more useful insights to the business.
So can someone who didn't have an archaeology degree...
Oh, you brought that up.
Yeah, of course I brought that up. So, I mean, you've said discover like 15 times in 15 minutes. So
yeah, sorry.
Is that like an occupational...
Yeah, well, listen, I think, to me, the fascinating thing about all of this is, and what really was exciting to me was the idea that, machine learning is one of those things like big data or, I'm probably going to make some enemies here, but digital transformation. It's like these big ideas that, are to some extent boiling the ocean, and it's very difficult for an enterprise to derive tangible value in the short term. And so, to me, search and that interaction is such a very successful use case of machine learning.
Right.
We deal with so much data at such scale, it's simply impossible to manage it.
Can't you see him with like a little brush, brushing off the data? This is the insight.
But to me, this is exciting because there's always ways, right? So it's really about understanding your customer a little bit better. It gets you closer. Frankly, search is one of those few areas where you would get a lot closer with the customer. And I read all the comments. Once a week I get an email with, here are all the comments I got back from our customers on search. And invariably they'll skew negative. That's human nature. They're more they're typically going to be ranting and raving a little bit more. But when we measured overall satisfaction, once we've implemented signals, we saw a 30-point increase within 90 days on our customer satisfaction score. So 30 points, not 30% better, but 30 points better.
And how important is customer satisfaction for you guys?
It's huge for us.
Metric you guys are measuring?
That's absolutely metric. A couple of years ago, Lenovo made that one of our compensation metrics. So they're very focused on improving customer satisfaction.
What do you think has been the biggest change in the experience that has made, from the customer perspective, not from the business perspective, but that customers really appreciate?
I think relevancy, right? So you can always break search, you can always find the edge case, you can always find the exception that just doesn't work. And that's one of those things that we're constantly having to go back to our executives, because they're the first ones to say, my wife tried to find this and it didn't work. You can always do that. But the reality is, when you look at the data, we've seen tremendous growth in revenue contribution. We measure everything from how far down the page are customers clicking on. Are they clicking on the first few results? So we're measuring all those things, and what we've seen is a substantial growth in terms of the click-through rate, in terms of the reduced abandonment rate, the reduced exit rate, the improved ranking in terms of our overall metrics. So I'd say the very first thing that we've done is relevancy. The next thing is going to be an even deeper relevancy. So as we start further segmenting and understanding our customers and their intent, with Fusion, we can actually start responding to customers' interactions in real time on the page, right? So as customers, a lot of things we're discovering. An example, our marketing team several years ago were pushing our gaming laptops, and these are all sort of beefy, laptops with all kinds of lights and big keys and things, and I look at it and I'm thinking it might be a great laptop, but I'll never bring that to my office and work on it because I'll be ridiculed. And so what we found out is there's a lot of ThinkPads that are being used as gaming devices because they're extremely capable, but they're more conservative, let's say, right? So they're more they can go across both audiences. And so what we're discovering, again, through search, keywords, the types of searches people are doing, and then the products ultimately that they're purchasing, we're able to start informing our marketing community that, hey, actually customers are really looking at these ThinkPads and these other products that are not gaming products typically. And so as we start using signals, being able to intercept that and start shaping the experience in real time to respond to search results, navigation preferences, interactions with the search page, and filtering to start presenting products that are in line with what our customers actually want, which is not necessarily what we think they want.
So do you do a lot with disambiguation? I mean, do you use auto-suggest or autocomplete at all?
So again, this is a journey. So yes, we've just deployed autocomplete just before the holidays.
How many here are using autocomplete? Do you understand that term? So you know how you type into Google and it finishes it for you, or it does a drop-down menu, giving you suggestions. That's what we're talking about.
Yep. So Fusion offers a lot of those tools that really help us and help the customer navigate through a lot of the complexity. And autocomplete is one of them. And the beauty of autocomplete is it's, again, real-time, it's interactive, it's aggregating data, it can present relevant information based on your navigation path. What words you're selecting, we present then the products that are most associated with those, et cetera. Have
you seen a greater stickiness since you've
started
incorporating this, that they're not leaving the page?
Yes. So all of these things are, the goal for search is always going to be relevancy, and relevancy could be anything from finding a job, finding the paper, to buying your product. And so anything that we can do to remove the friction and make the results and the information we present them more relevant from the first, the get-go is a win for us and for our customers.
Are you doing search in different languages?
We are. So we currently have deployed search on the website in 88 countries, and we support 36 different languages. We're also supporting different audiences within those languages as well. So it definitely is, we're able to do that at scale.
Is there any challenge internally with managing languages?
It definitely is. So again, Lenovo is one of those companies that has with that broad of a footprint, you can't have as large a team as we would in North America as you do in some of the smaller countries. And so they tend to be relying on us to do a lot of the work for them. And so it does become challenging in terms of managing dictionaries, synonyms, some of the local knowledge, some of that becomes a little bit challenging, but we can also get a lot of the way, or down the path a fair amount with the tools that Fusion provides to begin with, and then we can work with our local counterparts in the geos or the marketing team to help fill that out.
So the language specialists internally.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the types of data that that's being read by Fusion and indexed. Is it just product catalog?
So right now we're doing product catalogs. We're doing third-party offerings as well. So there are a number of products that we are reselling on the website. We also do things like customer testimonials, white papers, and those types of things. And then we have just generally marketing sites that we have to index as well. So it's
Are you doing reviews? Do customers review products?
We do. Yeah.
Does that get fed into it as well?
So that's part of it does, and we're integrating that, and we're learning to use signals and starting to try to use that data aspect as well to improve, again, search results.
So I know one of the mandates you have for this year is to actually increase mobile. How will that change?
Yeah, so search, what Fusion's been able to offer us, and this is something we implemented just before the holidays, is dynamic navigation. Mm-hmm. So we did that on the desktop, and it was very, very successful. And so if anybody here on the merchandising side has ever had to manually build a sales page, it's very time consuming, and it's one thing to do it in one country in one language, and then trying to support something like Cyber Monday, Black Friday, and you've got these special deals, and then things go out of stock, and then you have to update them. It's very, very time consuming. It's very labor intensive. Now trying to replicate that across multiple countries is very difficult. And so one of the things that we're able to do is use Fusion to actually generate these pages dynamically. So if you think of it simplistically, using a canned search string, we can define what are the parameters that we want the search results to provide.
Can you give an example?
So we could say, show me all laptops that are 20% off that are Cyber Monday deals. And then that would generate, the results of that would automatically populate a page, and that allows us to update dynamically using Fusion. It allows a salesperson to literally just click through and select which attributes that they want to filter on, and then we can dynamically generate these pages. And so that was a huge win for us for the holiday period. And now we're starting to investigate how we can use that type of technology and approach to start shifting to a more adaptive type of experience. So those are the types of things that we can do with search.
It's it's funny. One of the things that we see is that people are always looking for the best. What's the best laptop? And I'm wondering if you could feed in customer reviews and correlate that and be able to create a landing page that says, these are the best.
Absolutely.
Do you find that? Are people switching to natural language in their search?
They are. So we're starting to see, the majority of our search results are still very product focused, and so there's still one or two keywords, but we're starting to see an increase in recommendation type requests. So best laptop for school, best computer for gaming, best PC for, so they're starting to use more phrase type searches. And again, with some of the phrase identification and some of these other tools, we can start intercepting that and improving the overall search results.
Do you get feedback? What has been the number one thing people have actually said? What nice thing have people said to you repeatedly? Yes, we know people complain.
Yes, people complain. I'll say, personally, the one of the metrics that I see, aside from just the hard numbers and looking at this, on a daily and weekly basis, is the number of complaints I've gotten from our internal executives has dropped significantly. So it was not unusual for me to get one or two emails from a senior executive every week about some complaint on the website, and now I haven't gotten one in I want to say 3-4 months at least.
A lot of people, who drove this internally? Was it on the business side? Was it the search architects? Who was actually driving this? So,
it really started out with, to some extent, serendipitous for me. It really started out with we didn't have a choice. So through this journey started about 3 years ago, and we were on technology that was sunsetting. And so we had to come off of the technology we're currently using. And I think it was, to some extent, a little visionary and a part of our leadership to say, well, look, this is something that we know is going to become more and more important. So as customers start getting more used to voice search, more used to Google searches, these other types of, less navigation-based interactions with the internet and more search interaction, there was an understanding that this is a trend that's going to continue beyond just Google and beyond just voice and the Alexas and whatnot, but people are going to start doing that on the website as well, and this is a natural progression to start making sure we provide an alternate navigation path. And so it started out with investigating where we wanted to go with search platform and making sure that the platform that was selected could take us there.
Are you doing anything with, no, do you have physical locations as well where people can pick things up?
We do in some countries.
Okay.
We do in China, we do in Japan, and we may in a few other countries, but for the most part it's online.
Okay, and I know you and I were chatting a couple weeks ago, and you were telling me that you're going to start mining where people are coming from to help inform your SEM buys.
Correct. So we're starting to look at how we can join data from organic search, from paid search. We want to see where people are coming from with our email campaigns. And as they start engaging with the site, we can start joining that data to understand, are we spending our marketing dollars wisely? Are there things that we should be changing in terms of our own content internally? Is there metadata that we should be adding? You know, one of the benefits, frankly, from working with Lucidworks has been just the community. So we've been able to reach out to other Lucidworks customers to understand some of the pain points and problems they've been trying to solve and learn from that. And it's been very interesting to understand how they're using that type of information to inform their marketing language campaigns and content as well. And so we're starting to adopt that as well. And a simple example is customers, when we first launched, Lenovo was first in launching the 2-in-1 category. So this was several years ago, only we called it a convertible. And of course, the rest of the industry jumped on really quickly to see that this was a differentiator, and yes, they wanted to make them as well. We kept pushing this notion of a convertible, but customers really did not understand that and started searching on 2-in-1. And so being able to understand that we may want to brand it as a convertible, we need to be able to reply to our customers' needs, which is 2-in-1.
Right.
So those types of insights, those are simplistic, but those are the kinds of insights we can start deriving from search and joining some of that data.
It's fun to hear the echo coming back. I had a question and it just disappeared. All right, it'll come up. I'm sure it'll come back. But I would like to open it up. I know you guys must have questions. I know what I was going to ask you. Can you share with us any metrics, like whether it's just percentages of
Well, sure.
click-throughs?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the CSAT was one of those metrics that it's important to us and difficult to measure specifically with search. We do NPS and we do other broader metrics, but it's hard to nail down to search. So we have put in a survey on the page, and we intercept the number of percentage of customers, and we saw, since implementing signals, we saw a 30-point increase in CSAT, which is very big for us. So that was a very, very key metric to show that we're headed in the right direction. In terms of just sheer revenue, as I said, we're now on year 3 of this journey. The very first year, our revenue contribution from search grew 95% year over year. So that was 95. So that speaks to some extent a little bit of the challenges we had, and then a recognition that we really need to get on a more coherent platform. Year 2, we saw a 47% growth, and we're on track this year for a 30% growth again year over year. So clearly the foundation is working. Customers are finding what they're looking for.
Do we have any questions? Because we would love to hear from you. Someone back there.
Internal reporting within...
I'm sorry, can you repeat it? Because I couldn't hear.
Okay, now I can be famous. All right. Reporting around search. What kind of reporting do you look at? How do you aggregate it? What kind of format? Who looks at it? Do you look at it? The merchants look at it? And how is it being digested accordingly? Thank you.
That's a great question.
That's a very good question. So we started out, as I said, we didn't really have a search practice. So we started out with just measuring everything, right? So that was we just didn't know what we should measure and what the measurements really meant. So I'll give you an example. We measured time on page. And so, initially we thought, well, the more interaction people have with search, that means that they're engaged and they're actually enjoying the experience and it's positive. Alternatively, it could mean that they're really frustrated, right? And they're not finding what they want, so they're clicking all over the place. So we started out by measuring everything from click-through rate, time on page, number of searches per visit, obviously the standbys, right? The revenue conversion, those types of things. Direct revenue is one of those things that we were measuring as well. And then as we start learning and as we start applying signals, we're starting to look a little bit more granularly and targeted. So we look more at things like we have a specific project we want to optimize for gaming customers, or we want to optimize for these white papers or an enterprise customer. So we may measure other things like click-through rate to actually signing up for a callback or something. So it really depends, right? So I'd say the metrics really depend on the use case you're trying to solve for. But we started out by measuring everything. So that would be a broad answer. As far as what our BMS is around, so how do we manage all of this stuff? We started out by first building some basic dashboards. So we started out with our stakeholders and explaining to them what these different KPIs meant. So click-through rate, we measured some of the basic ones that we knew were important. So are they clicking on the top 10 results? What percentage of our customers are clicking on the top 10 results returned? Conversion rate, obviously, abandon rate, 0 results. So just generally looking at the key metrics around the search page itself. We built a dashboard that allowed them to be more interactive and self-sufficient. We were a small team. That was key because otherwise we would have spent a couple of days a week just putting these reports together for them. So that was at the last year, let's say, and that was really to help establish credibility of search, help them understand the value that this drives for their business and their investment. And then the following year, we're sort of the tail end of this now, we're looking at it on a weekly basis. We have our own core teams. We've organized our team into sort of a business stakeholder representative as well as a technology side. And we have weekly meetings with the merchandisers to look at what our conversion rate is, what our exit rate is, what the average order value is. So we're looking at all of these different metrics to understand, inherently search is going to convert, if you're doing it right, will convert higher than the normal e-commerce, normal web page or web navigation. And largely there's an intent when people engage in search. You expect it to be higher. But looking at the other dimensions, like what's the average order value, those are other things that we can look at to try to understand why is it one is either higher or lower, and then as a result, what can we do to influence that? And so we meet with the merchandisers on a weekly basis. We meet with our executive stakeholders. We report on a biweekly basis to them. And this is essentially the high level sort of, here's a summary of where we're at, what we're focused on. But the working meetings are really down at the merchandising level, at the country level, where we start, and what we've learned, we need to narrow the focus and take on specific targets. We want to reduce the 0 results in this particular country because it's an outlier. Let's understand why, and let's go fix it. Right? So we tend to try to tie those to more actionable activity. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Any other questions? So where they think, and stop being shy, one of the areas, are you doing anything with dynamic classification?
So we're starting to. This goes back to one of those challenges we have where we have a number of different people that create content and then can sort of loose the content in the wild, and that can just wreak havoc in the ranking and the results.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is use auto classification to start categorizing these things and using machine learning rules to start building out exceptions and try to learn what are the right categories for our customers.
We actually did a survey. Lucidworks asked 123 different retailers doing $100 million in revenue or more, some of the different capabilities. Customers, can they search types or categories of products that they want to view? And of course, that was the highest at nearly 75%. Collecting customer feedback signals. We did find more and more people are doing that, about 2/3. customers shown recommendations based on what other customers are doing. You're doing that?
So those are all things that we have currently in plan. The recommendations piece are things that we're focused on next, but all these other items we do have in place now.
And of course, this is always iterative, right? You start
Absolutely.
it and then you tweak it and then you keep moving
Yep.
on. Another series of questions. This is part of a white paper that we produced, and if you're interested, you can talk to one of my colleagues, myself, or come by the booth at 1127, and we'll give you a link to the survey. But these are the different ways that these retailers who are responding said that they're using AI and ML to power their customer experiences. Is there any surprises in this?
There's not. I guess my only surprise would be A/B testing being as low as it is. I think to me, A/B testing is the most exciting aspect of all of this, right? At the end of the day, whether you're trying to get customers to a white paper or trying to get them to purchase something, you want to be able to constantly be tuning the rules and the algorithms that you're using to improve the experience, and A/B testing allows you to do that.
Do you think it has to do the friction between trying to impose a new test?
Probably the complexity. I'll tell you that it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you try to do it at scale. Smaller companies, Fusion has a lot of that built in, but then as you start working at scale and you start using things like CDN and you start using caching, then things start breaking down a little bit, so it gets trickier.
We did do a cross-tabulation on this, and we found that the biggest companies, probably with the largest catalogs, were actually taking the longest to index new product. It was taking upwards of 24 hours, so which was really surprising to me.
Yeah, there's a lot out there.
Yeah, I was really. Any other questions? We have this bright light shining on us, so if you want to ask a question, just wave, because I can't see you.
I don't see any, Diane.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I want to, Marc, the type of skill sets that you're hiring now, what are you looking for? I mean, you were an archaeologist by training.
Yeah. So, I think one of the smart moves we did was data science. I think that's a key part of it is really getting someone who is going to be focused on understanding the data, because it is complex and there's a lot of nuances between the different segments and the different sources of data and how to interpret the data. So that's clearly a key thing. But I think, like everything else, we're hiring people out of college, we're hiring young people. To me, curiosity is the key thing, right? There's so much potential for the insight side of this. That's the most critical thing, is someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves and just sort of dig at it a bit and understand, hey, what else is going on here?
Do you think the merchandisers understand that there's all of this information from the search box? Is that something that,
They're starting to.
Yeah, are they, because I've always heard they're a little nervous about the machine learning coming in and...
Well, they are. So I think there's two sides to it. One is we're a little nervous about letting the merchandisers loose, because they will, whatever the customers want, they will tell the customer what they want to sell. So that's always a bit of a give and take. But they're also recognizing, again, with the metrics and the results, it's a lot easier to have the conversation when they say, well, we want to put 18 banners up and it's going to be flashing and it's going to be all this stuff, to come back and say, okay, well, we took it off and here's what we did, and we're going to go ahead and turn these on. So the metrics allow us to have conversations beyond the emotional side of it, and they're starting to understand that and see that. And the fact that with things like Predictive Merchandiser, that we can start putting tools in their hands to help optimize the results and balance between what signals are providing and what the customers are looking for with what their goals are.
So with Predictive Merchandiser, he's referring to a feature of Fusion that allows you to block or boost. So let's say you get more percentage points from one manufacturer, you might want to push that up to the top regardless of whether or not.
Absolutely. And so we can also address some of the outliers and edge cases as well. So it helps them, fix some of the anomalies that may be happening, because there's always going to be edge cases. But it gives them more skin in the game, so they get more engaged. It also lets them understand what our customers are experiencing. The beauty of it is it's real time. You can see what the signals are providing as a result, and they can start engaging with that and managing it as well.
For the folks that are here and listening, what should they do? I mean, they're going to go back, and you've given them a lot of ideas to think about, but what is something that they could do right off the bat, a question they could ask themselves or their team to sort of start putting them in the right direction?
Wow, that's
Sorry, I didn't give you that question.
yeah. So, what could you do? Look, I think you need to think of. I think everyone needs to think of search as more than just a black box. Fundamentally, we need to look at it in terms of available insights, and then as you develop your plans and as you start working on the future of what you want to get out of search, I think you need to look at that from that perspective to really start stepping back and saying, ultimately, where are we trying to get to with our search experience, and then how can we leverage those insights into other areas of the business?
All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us and thank all of you for listening. And
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.